just a lot of cool B-roll for your camera. So
I thought I'd use it more than I did. I got the first one and I was pretty excited about it, and I carried it around a lot. I just didn't use it as much as I thought.
it sucked at first. There were like 3 or 4 firmware updates before it
Right.
finally got to a point where it was workable.
Well, define creator kit. I didn't know it was a thing.
The creator kit is what they just put out. So the last version was just the camera, but they realized that people wanted wireless. People wanted a way to hook up a microphone. People wanted a way to different things. So that they created the creators kit, which gives you a small little tripod right here, and then the wireless module, which is right here, and then there's like lenses that you get with it, and then the little joystick, which I just had here. Where'd it go? It's so small. There it is. It's just super tiny joystick right there.
It's cool.
Well, we used to call that a bundle.
We're going to start up.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching YouTube, you can join the actual conversation in Zoom. Just look at the little link below. If you're here as an attendee and you're wondering how all these people became panelists, they got here early. They had good audio, good video, good internet, and they thought that they could contribute something to the conversation. And we're sure that and they do on a daily basis. So if you think that you can contribute to this conversation, we would love to have you join. So your background, we want people with different backgrounds, with different knowledge sets. Sitting in this little group is a couple centuries worth of experience, and that's what we want to keep on building up. Is just really all these different ways of looking at media production. So if you think you can add to that, you're invited, and we'd love to have you. You need to be here by 6:40. We open the doors at 6 o'clock. So 6 a.m. is when we start. Can't promise anything in the morning. It wanders around. But at 6:40 to 6:43, we start the mic checks. Once we start the mic checks, except for Saturday, we close up everything. So we just focus on the people that are here. Now, on Saturdays, because of educators, we open the mic check again at 7:55 so that we can do education, bring a special crew in, which is kind of amazing. We have all these administrators and teachers and people who think about all these things are, kind of, you'll see this whole panel transform for the educators to have a conversation about that. So that happens at 8 o'clock on Saturdays. On the other days, we have different verticals. So Monday's kind of a wild card. Tuesday is audio. Wednesday is video. Thursday is usually a guest, but we're still kind of working those bits and pieces out. And Friday is more about the business and the logistics of doing events. So those are kind of where we've kind of settled in for a lot of what we do on the other days. Sunday is just kind of a hangout day. It's 2 hours of us just talking. You can ask whatever you want. So anyway, so that's kind of how we have it planned. If you like this and you want to share it with other people, you can. Just don't use your own link. I'll put in Makana the link that you actually want to use. That is the general link that people can use to register. And the bigger we get, the more fun we'll have. So we slowly keep on. We add more people, and then we add more panelists, and then before you know it, we've got another great conversation. Every day is driven by the audience. So this is really not. We don't have a big plan. Our big plan is that you'll come up with questions that need to be addressed. So it's really up to you. Right now is a good time to ask questions. We don't have a ton of them in there right now. So if you have questions about education specifically, e-learning, education, make sure to put edu:, so edu:, in there so that we know to save that for the second hour. But otherwise, get your questions in early. Vote on questions. If you're not asking questions, vote on them. Let us know that these are ones that are important to you. All right. Bill, you ready to go?
Absolutely. So we had a discussion earlier, and for those of you joining on YouTube now, you might have missed it. It was really fascinating, and this question relates to that. Alex mentioned keep your elbows in. You gave me great advice before we went live. Would you mind defining for those on YouTube just 2 steps for me to tighten up my pre-production and production pipeline?
So this is from Sky. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Yes, it is from Sky.
Yeah. So, and by the way, so just to define my term that may be obscure, when I say keep your elbows in, I used to wrestle. So that was my thing in high school. And if you got your arms out like this, so if someone got you to pull your arms out like this, you were thrown like that. Like you're just, I could throw you in a second, and anybody can. They can get up under you. They can, and so when you're told to keep your elbows in, if you ever watch wrestling on the Olympics or whatever, you'll see these guys come in and their elbows really in like this and their hands up and their elbows are all tightened in there so that you can't get under it, So the thing is that when I say keep your elbows in, it's like don't stretch out further than get thrown. It doesn't mean that you don't go forward. It doesn't mean you don't do it. It's just that you just protect your protect your sides. So the big thing with live events is be afraid of them. So you want to be afraid of your live event. And this is not, like you are doing a bunch of things in front of a lot of people. And as you get more successful, you'll do it in front of more and more and more people. Remember, what's easy for us to forget when we're doing live events is we think, oh, we're here and we relate to just the camera. And that's in a good, sometimes it's a good way because you don't get overly nervous and you're only paying attention to that one camera. But if you see 300 people walking, 300 people watching, or even 50 people watching, think about how you would interact if you're walking up on stage in front of 50 people. Right now we have 109 watching, and so we want to think about how would we be in that, I have something buzzing. I can't figure out what. It's like a random, sorry, I have nothing in front of me. I'm doing this in front of 109 people right now, and I can't quite figure out what is going crazy here. So anyway,
we do not hear. I do not hear it.
No, it's
in your head.
It must be. Anyway, so I keep on feeling phones and feeling things, and I can't. Oh, hold on. It's my. Okay, sorry. That was my whole table is vibrating. I couldn't figure it out. It was my tea timer. For some reason, it was going off. So anyway, from minutes ago. Anyway, sorry about that. So anyway, so the thing is that think about how would I and if you're envisioning 1,000 people watching it. If 1,000 people were there, you would spend a lot of time on setup. You would rehearse. You would do all the things that you would do in front of 1,000 people. But a lot of times when we do live streams, we don't do that. We just kind of, okay, we're now getting started. So there's a couple things. One is in pre-production, the most important thing is how do I get into the show? How do I get out of the show? That is with everything. It's how do I get in, what's my fill and exfill? So infill and exfill is what you're trying to figure out. And that's going to always be the most important piece of that. And so how are you going to start the event? You want to think about the entire user experience. So from the time they find out your event is occurring, what's their experience? And are they, delighted by that experience or not? And we really talk about delight. It's not just, are they satisfied with it or whatever, but is it a delightful experience? And I don't always succeed at that, but I'm just saying that's what you want to be constantly trying to think through is how do we set that up? Then the big thing is how are you going to, for instance, start your event? Is it going to be a countdown clock? Are you going to dial someone in? Or are you going to, how are you going to cue someone so that it feels like you're in control? Then once you're in that show, the big thing is that when I talk about keeping your elbows in, it's really don't do more than you have skill set and capacity to do. You can do that. You can experiment a lot with your friends in that area. But as soon as you start doing something public, you want to generally dial back 30 to 40% from what you think you're capable of. So you sit in this kind of, 50 to 60% of what you think you can do is about what you should do. There's a lot of things that we experiment with that we go, oh, we could do this crazy thing. And I know how to, and I don't tell my clients that, until I experiment with it, I play with it. We do tests, we figure stuff out. We just did an HDR show. The first experiments I did with that 2.5 years ago. I didn't try to turn it into something immediately. I didn't tell everyone I could do it because I didn't know, and even then it was hard. So the thing is that you want to very carefully, move up to that next piece. And so for your show, if you don't have a great, for instance, handheld operator, don't use one. Just use, you can use tripods. If you don't, if you try to keep matching cameras is a good thing. Being able to, and then the other thing is really plan it out. So when I'm on air doing a how-to, when I used to do a lot of stuff for Call for Help and screensavers and so on and so forth, there's a whole rehearsal. We're going to go from here to here, and we're going to do this, and then I'm going to show you this, and then I'm going to do. It's not reacting to it live. They're not reacting to it live at all. We talk about it. We figure out where that camera has to be, and where these things have to go, and there's cues, for that process. And so you really want to kind of pull in, to that piece. Now, there's things about we're going to talk more about cooking on Monday, but so I'm going to I'll show some of the stuff we've done related to cooking and talk about what the challenges were and what we figured out. But you want to think about keeping it as simple as possible unless you have the capacity and the people to do it. It's always going to come down to your talent. that's what a lot of people, and so if you have great talent, you just want to give them the space to do what they do. You don't, by making it more complicated, you actually make it harder for them to do what they do. You make it harder for them to participate. And so that becomes a more challenging, process. So anyway, so that's my recommendation as far as live shows go, is to just, be conservative, and just do what you can do, and then practice a lot. Like rehearse, and do it as close to the real thing as possible. Like I'm working in a lot of multi-language stuff recently, and we're building up all these test files that are not like, this is French, this is French, this is French. I'm paying an interpreter. I'm giving them a clip of video with audio. I'm paying them, 8 interpreters to do all of their interpretations of that clip. Then I have the source file that I'm going to use to test everything. But I'm not, the closer you get to real ammunition, the better the better whether you can do what you can do. But I think that for you, Sky, you're on the precipice of something amazing. Like, you really are on a rocket ship, but that rocket ship's going to move really, really fast right now. And if you let it go to the side, it's just going to start doing this, and so, this is the hardest point when you get, and I've seen this a ton of, the reason I bring it up and we would keep on talking about it and I get fixated on it is because I just want you to succeed. I want you to succeed. And I've watched this, I've seen this movie before, and sometimes it's a great movie and sometimes it's a horror film, and so the thing is that and more often it's a horror film because people suddenly got the engines turned on, but they were pointed in the wrong direction, or they weren't pointed in any direction. And then they just kind of fly off. And so the thing is that the next, I would say the next 2 to 6 weeks is this going to be this incredible, like, you don't get to choose anymore when you're going to get off the ground. You've given that up, by having a bunch of PR, and that's good because it forces you to the forefront, but you're going to have to spend time and money and effort and pull in as many friends as you can and get it all working as fast as you can, because you don't have much time to work with now, and so that's the thing you have to look at. And I would recommend any of our friends that are listening from the Seattle area to contact Sky and let's figure out how we get more people involved just to get him as a group, get him off the ground. And I'm happy to find times that we can that we can review our that we can review some of the stuff you guys are doing. So I can schedule time on weekends. Mickey can help you with audio. A lot of us can watch the stuff. But again, I think that we have an opportunity right now we have a member that is on the cusp, and we just want to figure out how to get them to turn that corner. So anyway, let's
you honor me, sir, and you honor me, and yes, and from day one, Madeline stated, "I'm the diamond in the setting," and in my church experience, how do we get all the technology out of the way of the message, and all of these hybridizations and this experience here, and Guy introducing me to his friends and
right.
Mickey showing up, and that you would offer that, I am deeply, deeply honored.
Oh, yeah.
And I will try to hang on and keep us all safe.
Yeah. So we just got to stay focused and turn the corner, because you have a great opportunity. I think that you're right there. It's just a matter of getting over the corner. Roscoe?
One thing I'd steal from first responders, you're going to keep moving in and out of her personal kitchen. Everything should have a package, and every package should have a list of what exactly is in there. If it's in a box, it's taped on the top. If it's in a bag.
In the next 2 weeks, I totally agree, but I think in the next 2 weeks, we're going to just start gluing stuff to the walls.
But you are going to move stuff in and out. So make sure it's...
Like, what I would do, like at this moment, I would try to talk her into the idea that you're going to make the kitchen a set. You might move things a little out of the way, but I would, until you get it figured out, one of the big things is you don't want to expend all your energy loading in and loading out. So I would talk to her about the fact that, and again, with anybody, I would talk about, there's an opportunity right now, but to get that opportunity working, you need to stop spending half your time setting up and having all the instabilities of that, and just get set up, stay set up for the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. Do as many of these streams as you can, even if they're private to us or private to somebody else. But really figure this thing out. And she has to be willing to do that. She has the opportunity to turn the corner.
She again, they're newlyweds. I mean, she moved in, but they're just newlyweds, and it's his house, and so, but he's all for it. I just don't know, as he realized, he married what he married into, and now a production company's moving into his house.
Well, the
Like,
opportunity, there's always this moment for a lot of people where opportunity arises and they decide whether they're going to rise up to that opportunity and take advantage of it, or they're going to have an easier life and have it be more comfortable. And, and they have to make that decision. Like, are they going to do what's necessary to make that turn? And the people that are successful, that probably makes more of a difference of doing what's necessary, probably makes more of a difference than whether they were in the right place at the right time, or whether they had good, skills or intelligence or anything else. It's at the moment that they were given the opportunity. You look at that in sports all the time. They get the opportunity and they leverage it, or they don't. And generally for folks in life, the more comfortable, if you're committed to comfort and ease and everything else, you'll have a fine life. It's fine, but you won't make that turn, and you won't get to do what you really want to do. And
the bizarre, amazing blessing. This is not Madeline's first rodeo, and so she understands it. Oh, she completely.
It's just less infrastructure than she's probably used to.
I am the one of the 120 people that she's used to working with.
Yeah. So it's an exciting time though. Go ahead, Stephen, real quick, and we'll move on.
That's just one thing. It's realizing that everybody has to buy in, and do you really, really want to do this? Because this is only the start.
Yeah.
This is not the end.
But the main thing is when this opportunity, we talked about this before the show, but when this opportunity opens up, what there is to do is there is a hard push. And when you get through that push, then you're now in a place where, you have a lot of leverage and control and things, a lot of opportunity shows up, but that push is a thing. Like most of the YouTubers that are successful, we think of, oh, they were just crazy YouTubers or whatever, but almost all of them did a lot of work to get to where they're at. And if they've got millions of followers, they were regular, they worked hard. Those movies took a lot to make. They didn't just pick up their iPhone and shoot. They were figuring stuff out and they were working on it. And we've worked with a lot of YouTubers and influencers, and these are some of the hardest working people I've seen. And so it's nothing Jeffrey can tell you. I mean, as doing those kinds of things, none of those videos are easy. None of those things are simple. And there's a bunch of people here, Guy and other folks, and Bill and other folks that have made lots of these little videos. And we all know that those are, they take work, they take hours, but again, when you have this moment, you got to take advantage of it, or just know that you're not taking advantage of it. And when it doesn't, come to fruition, know that you didn't do what was necessary.
Well, and that's Bruce's comment. Is this a hobby or is this a job? And we all want it to be fun. And that oftentimes,
but I would also look at it as, is it an investment? So you're investing time. It's not a hobby. It can be a job, but that job is you're investing time, into something that can grow into something in the future. Just because you're not getting paid doesn't mean that it's not your job. Brilliant. It's just that it's not if you treat it like a hobby, it'll always be a hobby. If you treat it like a job that you're investing time and effort into, then you approach it differently. So anyway, it's
amazing.
Next question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and interestingly enough, this is from Guy Cochran here in the panel, and he said he wants to ask the panelists, where were you at in your career 20 years ago, and how is that different than where you are today? So it kind of follows.
Go ahead, John. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Okay. My background's a little different than the other panelists here. I've worked in IT for the last 20 years, but 20 years ago, I was pushing computers across the floor of a nuclear power plant. And now I'm running security, one of the lead infrastructure engineers on a security team for a Fortune 100 company that protects billions of dollars of assets, the largest owner of farmland in the world. So, yeah.
There you go. Good. Well done.
Thank you.
What was the second part of that question? It was just,
where were you in your career 20 years ago?
How
is it different from today?
So it's a long progression. Jeffrey?
Yeah, I was in IT as well 20 years ago. I was working for the state of Wisconsin Department of Revenue, and we were doing a whole bunch of NT upgrades. So I was traveling around the state and going from computer to computer. But more important, 13 years ago to today, and I didn't realize this until I had my live stream this morning, talked about it, was the day that my website, geekazine.com, launched.
There you go.
13 years ago.
That's great. Bill?
Thanks.
So I was trying to think back 20 years ago, and I think I was just in the cusp. I had been doing corporate video for a while and building my business, and had gotten more and more successful. But about when High 8 came around, that was the first time I realized that I didn't have to go to a TV station and use Betacam and the rest of that stuff, and I literally could do some sort of home-based business with video. And about 20 years ago, I started planning my first home studio. And I've showed some pictures of where we got to in a converted horse property hay barn that I turned into a really pretty good insert stage and pocket studio, and did about 10 to 12 years of pretty high-end, increasingly large corporate video because of that. But I think I was dreaming about that. And it was fun to dream about it 20 years ago, and then in 3 or 4 years to watch that actually happen and become a physical thing.
Sky?
I think I was just meeting Guy. I think he was in Santa Monica. You were teaching Final Cut. I was editing at Univision and learning Budweiser, tambien, because we were doing marketing and the promotions of the evening news. Sorry, Victor. Sorry. And then I was commuting between that and the back lot of Warner Brothers doing Pokemon. So I was doing a lot of animation promotions.
That's great. Brian?
So total different career. I was at that point in South Florida at a large church as the music and creative director. So one of those churches that had drama and theater staging, full fly space and all that kind of stuff. So that I was the creative director, but my hands-on work was doing the music every week. And so writing, arranging, composing, rehearsing bands and making that happen. And a friend and I, a couple of years before that, had started a web hosting company. So on the side, hosting web, doing some very early web hosting. And that company has now been sold and gone. And I was just beginning to touch Media 100 for the first time because it looked really intriguing. And now here I am doing video for a living.
That's great. Seth?
Yeah, so I'm going to contribute to the IT trifecta, which is what I do currently. But 20 years ago-ish, I was a journalism student and was doing that for a while when I was in college, and then career-wise moved into IT and web. And then this year, all of a sudden, all those media skills and AV skills that I thought were many years behind me came to the forefront and ended up merging it. So life became one kind of crazy, not so much a full circle, but just a melting pot of everything that I had done in my past.
TJ?
20 years ago, I was shooting weddings on film. Kids ask your parents. You used to open up the camera and put stuff inside to make the pictures work. And now shooting everything on digital.
Victor? And then Laura.
I was at the time, SBC Communications, developing the first ATM call center to call center transmission from California to St. Louis, and everyone telling me it couldn't be done, and we doing it in a year and a half.
That's great. Laura?
Well, 20 years ago, I was actually a certified nursing assistant. I was just getting into my first career, which led to me going back to college, where I became the test dummy for accessibility. And then I ended up getting my master's and going into education, and I still end up being the test case for accessibility, except on the staff side now.
That's great. That's great. Stephen?
20 years ago, was responsible for the network and call center infrastructure for something that was doing 1 million calls a day. And now I am working with 3 large banks as an advisor. I found out that is the best job on earth, because if you're a consultant, you deal with HR and have projects you have to be attached to. If you're an advisor, you advise. And and you have no project, you don't deal with HR, you submit an invoice and money shows up.
That's great. That's great. Roscoe?
20 years ago, I was demoing this cool NLE called Final Cut Pro 1 at NAB. and it's a lot of fun. I used to fly around for a company called Promax and did all their education shows promoting Firewire and DV because it replaced for schools. It was a huge benefit to schools. But I've had the same career at the university I'm currently at for the last 30. So
that's great. Yeah, I think I was, I had just, so 20 years ago, I was thinking about that. It was a good moment. And well, not necessarily a great moment in time, but for me, but I had finished Star Wars, and I had in 1999, and worked on this little film called Titan AE. It was out for like 10 seconds. But it was a lot of my time. And then I'm really good at making ice crystals. Anyway, so and then and then I had gone to Zimbabwe in June of 2000, right during the elections, which was very exciting. So I had done, I had raised in the spring of 2000. Wanted to start this little company, and the folks said, you can't raise, I said, I want to go to Zimbabwe. I want to prove my model. And they were like, well, you can't go to Zimbabwe. And I said, well, if I can raise $250,000, can I go to Zimbabwe? And they were like, yeah. So I raised it in a weekend. And I came back and I said, okay, let's go. I'm going, and I spent $30,000 on camera gear, and PD100s were the thing that at the time. And so we got a couple of those, and we taught a bunch of students down in Zimbabwe how to shoot video, and spent a couple of weeks there. It was life-changing, just to, Africa oftentimes is, but it's just a different environment. And so anyway, so did that, and then came back, and I was trying to figure out what to do with all of that. I'd figured out how to do this, and I'd figured out how to do that. I was teaching. I was trying to figure out all the bits and pieces. And soon after that, the Pixel Core came out about that time. Like it had started in its little pieces, but it was like in its like seedling group, 20 years ago. So it was, and then it was a pretty crazy ride from then on. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, 20 years ago, I was reading Roscoe Jones' cool little golden list of things to read and look through about DV. I mean, it was the coolest thing. So I was following Promax pretty heavily. I was a trainer for DV creators. That's where I met Sky. I was teaching Final Cut. So then, just listening to cool people and figuring out how to change video. So it was a fun time, because we were definitely in an interesting space working with Apple and a lot of Canon, a lot of big companies. It was a lot of fun back then. Yeah. Still is.
Hosmuc?
Oh yeah, and then circling back to the IT side, how's it different now? I'm fascinated now to see so many IT people here on the panel with that background, because I'm full circle trying to learn NDI and IP addresses and DHCP and all this crazy stuff, but it's all going back to what you guys already know. But that's where video's going, is it's going to be an IT world.
Well, and that's what I'm glad that we're having. What I think was one of the powers of this panel is this intermingling of folks that are media and folks that are IT, and us trading notes across it, I think is a really powerful piece of the puzzle. Go ahead, Hosmuc.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about my medical training. So by 20 years ago, I'd already given up medicine for 11 years. In those 11 years, I became a reseller of software. Then I became a distributor of software. Then I headed up WordPerfect for Africa. Then I set up a call center for Novell. I became a marketing director for Novell for their groupware products and communications products. And then in 2000, I was appointed as chair of the largest mobile operator. And what I've learned thus far, my key skill is people skills. That means that's what's attracted events to me rather than looking for things. Mm-hmm. So my career has been shaped by things happening to me rather than me seeking them out. So 20 years ago, I think I was quite confused. So I decided to go on a meditation camp, something called Vipassana. Mm-hmm. So you go away for 10 days, and it's called noble silence. You don't speak, you don't listen. You get served for 10 days and you meditate about 10 hours a day. That kind of got me to know myself a lot better. And when I was the chair of the mobile operator, I again dealt with a lot of the middle management. And I was kind of the psychiatrist for middle management and their conflicts in the organization. today they are very senior executives and they run this huge company. And they support me in my venture right now. So they buy lots of videos from me, kind of 20 odd years later. So I think what I've learned in life is that you spin the wheel for others and you never know how it's going to spin for you. So I think all my life, my skill has been to try and serve and help without any expectations.
Yep.
If I have an expectation or a motive, it doesn't really work. So that's really what's guided my life. And this is the same within this team. You know, I feel extremely honored because I give a little bit, but I get so much back from this office hours. I have, and again, I think office hours found me instead of me looking for office hours. Alex and I met many years ago, and I got this email from him. I'm starting up this office hours. And I was discussing with Miki this morning. Somebody said, Ashmuk, you know, your webinars and your Zoom virtual meetings are the most professional I've seen in this country. I'm saying to Miki, man, I haven't even started yet. Guys, hang around and let's see where we go with this. So, Alex, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing. And you know, a lot of times it really is this, for whatever reason, we've been able to, as a group, you know, create a family, you know, that's global. You know, it really is. And, you know, when I took a course, you know, I took a course 30 years ago. And one of the things that they said is, you know, plan out 5 years, you know, and then I planned 50 instead. So I was like, oh, I want 50 years. But you had to build your own, I don't think I've ever shared this before. So you had to build a title statement, like, what is your life going to be, you know? And so my title statement, which still, you know, I still am attached to, is a worldwide transformation through a global conversation where no one's left out. And I feel like we're doing that. You know, like it's, you know, you know, it's, you know, and so I shorten that usually publicly to just a global conversation where no one's left out. You know, and we're slowly figuring that out, you know, and this is the seed of that. And that's what the Pixel Core was designed to do. That's what, you know, everything else was designed to do, is figure out how do we empower everybody with the tools that they need to tell their story and to teach what they know to the rest of the world. And how do we feel connected? And it's why we don't talk about things that divide us. It's finding the things that are similar, you know, in humanity across all of these cultures and all these beliefs and everything else. So, anyway, so I'm we usually this is on Sunday that we have these conversations, not on YouTube, but anyway, so I'm honored to be with all of you, and I just want to thank everyone for coming every day, you know, and being part of this conversation. So thank you. All right, now we'll go to the next question. Good question, Guy.
Yeah, it was a really good question.
Yeah.
So now we're going back to a little more prosaic and normal stuff. John Pruitt of Huntersville says recommendations for a mic boom, or for mic boom arms for a Heil PR40. The one I used to use wore out near the base after a month, and the replacements haven't been strong enough.
Now, the one you used to use, was it the Heil one? The Heil arm is really nice.
Okay, I'll look at that one. I just want to make sure. I figure this is the place to go for that sort of thing. It seems to be a good boom.
I've done cheaper. I've done cheaper ones, but the Heil one, as a relatively inexpensive one, is a good one.
I use a clamp on the desk, and it was wearing out where the boom arm sits in the clamp, and it just bent. The metal just gave out within a matter of weeks.
Yeah, eventually what you do is, I mean, what I tend to do with all of mine is I drill a hole into my desk, and I put the mount into it, and then I do it, but that tends to be what
it's a 100-year-old desk.
Don't
I'm
do
not
that then.
Doing that.
Don't do that. Well, I wouldn't even clamp something to it if it was 100 years old. So
I have protection. I put leather buff.
So the other one that I've used that's more camera ready are the OC White booms. The OC White ones are really they're a little bit more expensive, but they're really nice, and they have an underslung one. So when you see a lot of them that are like radio show hosts that stream, what you're seeing are OC White, underslung mic arms. Those are really nice ones as far as that goes. Go ahead, TJ.
Plus one on the Heil boom. That's what I've been using for months now. It's working 6-8 months. It's working great.
And that's the Heil there, John, Mr. Preto. Yeah, that's the Heil mic there. The Heil arm. Yeah, I think the arm does really well. And I bought cheaper ones, and then I always regret it. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I'm using the Blue Microphones Compass here, which I wasn't using for a long time until Chris Fenwick said, "Hey, you can adjust the tension strength on that through a little hexa nut on the bottom," and it's worked great for me. It doesn't have exposed springs. It looks just like if you're walking into a radio station. And a lot of people they not only get it for the Blue microphones, but also I see a lot of when people get the Shure the 7 whatever that number is microphones,
7B.
they get the Compass arms with them as well.
Bill and then Jesse.
Yeah, I'm going to double down on the OC White. I'm going to see if I can switch to my phone camera, which you're now seeing how robust the OC White clamp on. It has 4 huge clamps underneath the desk, underneath that lip, and then 2 big, strong arms that you can screw into the top of the desk you want. Literally, that thing is going no place.
Yep. Go ahead, Jesse.
Just set up a couple of studios for teachers to eliminate this issue. And that is, if you have your mic or camera clamped to the desk itself, you might get movement and stuff. So one idea would be to put a stand on the ground, not attached to the desk and for the mic, and then a stand on the ground not attached to the desk for the camera. So one idea.
That's great. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Vincent Alvarez. A 4-H group wants to improve their audio when showcasing their horses, beef, cattle, sheep, and swine, and so forth. While using an iPhone, what mic solution should they buy? And do they want to know lav, shotgun, or something else? Need both hands to control bigger animals. And the children who are involved in this are mostly 7 to 12 years old, but up to 18.
So I think that the one that I would look at pretty hard is the Rode Go, little wireless packs with a, like a Samson headset or even a Pulson or something like that, like a little headset that they can have there that they can just run down. I think I've talked about this before. My sister-in-law uses it for yoga. She does therapeutic yoga, and she finds that Go has worked really well for her. I think for kids, it's not super expensive, and it'll give them a great mic. The one thing I'll say is, if you're as someone who used to be in 4-H, if you're going to do wires, make sure to run it under their shirt. Do not leave it open. The cattle or the horses or something, they'll get tangled up, and it could be really a bad scene. So just make sure to pull the wires in, as Livestock can do a lot of things that are unpredictable. So, but outside of that, I think that the GoPro with a headset, or the Rode Go with a headset would go pretty far with them. It'll be pretty clear in most barns. And so I think that you'll hear the problem with the acoustics. I have a lot of experience with acoustics in livestock areas, and if you do anything that isn't a headset, the lav or a shotgun or whatever is going to pick up a lot of other things. Like, there's just a lot of other things happening in a barn, and especially if you're at a fair, or I don't know if they're going to do anything like that, at this point. But if you're in any larger area, you're just going to there's just a lot of ambient noise. It'll be hard to hear what they're saying. So I would definitely go with a headset. Any other? Yeah, go ahead, Hosmut.
Just an interesting application for the Rode Go. I use it for the in-ear monitors for the Talon. So I reverse the whole Rode Go. So I attach the transmitter into the mix pre and the receiver in the Talon. And that's also very useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, seeing that we're thinking about using cell phones as the camera, then it gives me an idea of the price range that you're going for. I wouldn't normally suggest the Rode Go, but in this situation, I think that would be the best bet. Just keep in mind with the Rode Go, it's not as easy to have a multitude of channels going on at the same time, so you can't really scale that up. And also in terms of range, you are fairly limited. Like I would say, like you'd be lucky to get in 30 feet out of it.
Yeah. And the other thing to know is that the next step down from there is probably just AirPods. The AirPods actually don't do a particularly bad job at it. But I would say that there's not a lot in between that would be great. Saramonic has a couple things on them, but those little ones that clip on tend to still pick up a lot of stuff around them. So, but the other place to look is Saramonic has a lot of solutions. I think that you really want to try to find something that's got a headset. Next question.
John Pewitt of Huntersville on the panel says, any recommendations for a place to find a TA4F male to XLR male so I can connect my Pyle to my Scarlett?
You go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, Shure sells one. It's I think around 80 or 90 US dollars. I'm a big fan of the converters from Ambient. They're a lot smaller in terms of the form factor, so it's easier to hide. And I know Bill also recommends another brand, a more affordable brand. So, and I think Jeffrey Powers is holding up the Shure one. Let me spotlight him.
That is the Shure one, and this does work with the Pyle T4AF because that was the first headset microphone that I had, and then I used this on that microphone.
Yeah, I think that's the one that I have, the YPA. Is that the YPA? No, that's a Shure. There's one from a company called YPA that does the same thing.
Next question.
Next question, moving on, is Carl Marxer of New York. Says, anyone know anything about the ALTspaceVR? How is it for creating and hosting live events, corporate events? It seems to be owned by Microsoft and programmed with Unity.
And I think we skipped one of those questions there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. But anyone used that? I haven't. I'm not a. I think that we're not quite in a space where a lot of these alt spaces. I think people talk about them being meetups. I feel like they are someday this will be useful. Like it's not. But I don't know if it. I'm not sure if it's useful yet. So that's I guess my opinion is it's again and everybody can think about all of us have different opinions about this. I feel like what we see here, an authentic communication between people, is the thing that makes a difference for people. It's not the whiz bang, how do we reproduce, we're now in a virtual space, or how we move around and all that other stuff. It is how do we let people be themselves and be with each other and learn from each other and learn about whatever the product is. But and I think that we get caught. We have all these technologies that are a solution looking for a problem. Whereas I think that the most basic things that we're doing here oftentimes are more effective. That as far as building up relationships and so on and so forth. I still am going to keep on saying that what companies should be doing is something every day, every week, constantly interacting with their constituents. And not trying to figure out how to do some crazy little thing that looks cool that takes an enormous amount of lift for very little impact. John, and then Jeffrey.
I think the problem that these technologies are trying to solve are something you dealt here with culture, and that's a lot of people don't feel safe getting on camera. They don't feel safe showing their faces. Women particularly get harassed for coming online and talking, and they're trying to make these avatars and things so that people have a more uniformity and that they don't get the beat down that they do in a lot of places. In my company, most people don't even show video on Zoom, and it's a fairly safe company. So I think you've fixed that problem with a culture where you've been very accepting, and while you do some shaming, hence the uniform background that most people have here. You also allow people that aren't like that in here, and you don't judge them for that. You don't shame people that don't ask for it. So
Well,
that's
I do think that I think part of it is that, but what we do also is we've set a clear line of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable as far as how people are related with different ideas, with different backgrounds, whether they're men or women, all the diversity, is we're very intense about that, because that's how you build a safe space.
And that's the culture thing I was talking about.
Right. And
You
but I think
set
that
a culture here.
you have to set those cultures, and I think you have to start at. I started at the beginning because I didn't start at the beginning in the previous iterations of this, and so I knew what I wanted when I turned it on was that we have to make it safe, and it has to be safe to have ideas, and it has to. And when I say safe, it's also clean show, like people who know me outside of this, and it's not necessarily my thrown way of being, but it's we have a clean show because that is also part of that culture. It is also part, of not telling off-handed off-color jokes, and not having innuendos, and not having, whether it's on Discord or here. I mean, that's part of creating that culture that is accepting, where people feel comfortable, and people who know from the back end, if we see a lot of, things going another direction than that, I tend to get a little edgy, so I think that it's, and it's mostly just protecting the culture, protecting that center. Go ahead, Jeffrey and Bill, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, it's definitely your board. So follow the rules, just simple as that. But go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, but other companies, if you're gonna do something like that, I think it's valuable to have a culture, but you have to be heavy-handed in some places. If people are gonna build this and build a regular interaction and expect people to show up and expect people to be part of it, they have to know that they're buying into constant nurturing. It's just like having a garden. You just got to keep pulling the weeds out.
And if we were at a comedy board, I think the rules would be completely different. So, back to the ALTspaceVR, they have the ability to do it in VR mode, in 2D mode, and if you want to test it out, they have a whole ton of come check out our events type situations. So you can like improv night is tonight. So Sky, if you're looking for something to do after the show, there you go.
There you go. All right, there you go, Bill.
I mostly make my money out of the corporate world, and I have to say this has been a defining thing that I've watched, because I've been operating some WebEx calls and some other things for corporate grouping who's coming together, and literally, even after we have sent out videos saying here are the simplest, most basic things you can do to improve your Zoom presence, people keep coming in and their face is down here in the lower corner and there's nothing up here, and their audio is bad. No, let me finish up this point on this. The thing is, I truly think, and Alex has said this before, the people who get it early like this, and because one person will come in and look good, and people pay more attention to what they're saying. They actually are taking more serious in a business sense, and I think their careers are going to do better because they're not being so casual about this new communications medium, which is where the world is moving.
Right, and part of it's also a function of that most of the video conferencing tools are dumpster fires. Like when with Blue Jeans, it has such a hard time seeing interfaces that I just stopped trying. I just use my webcam on my laptop. I don't even try to do it anymore. And so I think part of the issue is that people are being crippled by the non-Zoom. Zoom is so much better at just being able to connect to your external devices that it makes it easier to do it this way. And I think a lot of people don't do it this way because those other tools just don't do it very well. Like Skype was like constantly breaking our tools, and I'm so happy now that I don't use Skype anymore. Anyway, let's go on to the next question.
Okay. So Andy Dolph, what inexpensive USB interface do you recommend for Pyle or other inexpensive headsets?
What do you got there, TJ?
This is the Sabrent USB audio stereo adapter. Get it in focus. It's $8. I'll post a link in Mukana.
This is a TechRise. It's what we tend to buy, and it's just because we bought them. We tested them, they worked, and then we just bought hundreds of them. so we use these a lot. We've had one or two fail out of a couple hundred, but it's TechRise and it's a $15 item. We had some issues with the Sabrent early on, and so we stopped using them. But they seem to work, I think, for a lot of people here in the group. For whatever reason, we had trouble with them, so we moved on to the TechRise. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, and head to head, the TechRise puts out just slightly more signal too. So that was a big one for me.
And that was the issue that we actually had, was the Sabrents were too quiet. Next question.
From Mickey and the panel in the Philippines, assuming one has a vision-capable HDMI source and a vision-capable consumer display, would it be possible to convert the HDMI source to SDI and then back to HDMI while maintaining vision? I assume 12G SDI is needed. Is this to enable longer cable runs?
No.
Long question.
Yeah.
Wah.
You can maintain a basically a PQ gamma, PQ and other things through that. HLG will maintain it, because those are just gammas that have to be reinterpreted back on the other end. The problem is that vision transmits per frame a trim. So there's a trim that's being transmitted per frame. That goes into the data stream that sits inside of HDMI. It does not go into the data. There's no reliable way to put it into the VANC data of the SDI. So if someone could build a box that would transmit vision. I just haven't seen it yet. What they would have to do is take the frame by frame trims from vision in an HDMI source and insert them into the line 21 VANC data in the SDI source, and then reinterpret those back out on the other end. But it would require a box that was able to interpret vision, insert it into the SDI stream, and then pull it back out on the other end. That box would be super valuable to a lot of us for a lot of other reasons, which is that if we can get the trim data, because the trim data is very simple. It's a handful of values, and typically what line 21 is used for is captioning. We put a couple languages in there, and it's also what Blackmagic uses to talk to the cameras. So it's this one little tiny stream that happens to be in the SDI signal that you can add data. And so so they could put the trim data into there. If we could get trim data into our SDI stream, then we could talk to our encoding partners to take that vision and be able to stream it directly. Right now, that you can't do that because, again, the SDI stream won't carry that vision data with it.
Similar to Atmos, you have to ensure that you're transmitting the metadata with it as well. I think that
Atmos can be wrapped, into what looks like a PCM, a stereo PCM. So it's basically Atmos gets muxed.
Bitstream.
Yes, yeah. So it can get muxed into what looks to the entire pipeline. Atmos is a little bit more mature than Vision as far as transport goes. And so they're able to mux that signal into it. They mux the data into they mux the Atmos information into the stereo PCM, and it goes through the entire system. So I think you can get Atmos through it, but I don't think you can get, you'd have to have, an encoder decoder that understand what they're looking at. It can't be just a standard HDMI to SDI converter, but it could actually, in Atmos's case, it could, because it wouldn't need to know anything, because it's just passing stereo information. But when you listen to it, it just sounds like, it's like a mux signal. So it doesn't have any meaning until you get to a decoder that knows what to do with it. So, but yeah, right now we can't. It's getting vision into SDI is, and the problem we have is that it's hard for people to invest in it, because 2110 is right around the corner, and so you'll be able to solve a lot of this in infrastructure in 2110 in a way that you can't with the coax. So we're kind of on the end of coax. Last 5 years, last 10 years, the next 10 years there won't be really any coax left. It'll all be IP. But it's so it's hard to get people to invest in something that doesn't have a future. So anyway, next question.
Thanks.
Yep.
Roger Miles of Lake Zurich, Illinois, is noting that what we're seeing from the Biden campaign and churches is a huge migrate to doing parking lot meetings. Does anybody have experience producing these types of events?
I mean, the challenge really is with these kinds of events. Is that it's just being outside. Now, a lot of these events get buffered by a lot of pre-records. So, I know that some of the stuff that, the Biden campaign was doing involves a lot of pre-records. So there's a lot of what we call direct to camera So DTCs that you put into it, and that they would put into it, and then so you get a lot of people doing it. And so that's a piece of it, and that helps kind of buffer that you don't have to carry an hour and a half of content, and it gives you a little bit more flexibility in that process. The next part of it is, when you do those, you just have to do them in a place where you have good weather. Like if you're doing really parking lot events and they're stretched out, you have to know that you're gonna put those to, and it depends on whether you're sourcing that content outside, or where you're distributing it. So a lot of people are just watching streams. So when some of the stuff that's been done that way, where you've got 50 parking lots that are all getting it, outside of something. They're all watching a big screen. You've got you put up a little infrastructure, and people can be together but apart, kind of thing. I don't fully get it. Like, I mean, I kind of get it, but I kind of feel like you just watch the stream at home. But I'm not the most social person in the world. So go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I would think there was a couple of things I would immediately go to, and this is just as a guy who's been doing production for 15 years, and some of it has been outdoors in places like Arizona, where if you don't rig something over somebody, they melt into a puddle during the summer. So controlling wind and controlling the mics and how those handle things like that. If you just take your indoor gear and move it outdoors, you're in a world of hurt, because your mics are going to get all sorts of wind noise in them. And if you have to put shade or do some reflection because the people that you're shooting are in the darkness, and so you're putting up a reflector or something to get them more light, those things become sales. And suddenly the amount you know about how to rig grip and sandbag things and make things not turn into a danger becomes very important. So just understand there is a difference between indoor production and outdoor production. Most of the issues are pretty well understood, but you need to do a good little bit of research to keep things safe and effective.
But well, Roscoe will answer too. If you're an educator and you want to we'll start adding you to the group. So go ahead and then we'll do mic checks for you. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Oh, I was just going to say, we just canceled an event. On November 21st, we're going to have a parking lot large screen. We went through all the negotiations. We had a contractor to build the large screen and stuff. But the reason people do it is because we have this $20 million performing arts center that's not getting used, and people have no reason to come and pay attention to us. So large organizations are doing it just for something for people to attend. What killed it is the coronavirus hasn't, well, it basically, the number of attendees we could actually have in cars was so low, it made no sense to do it.
Yeah, I get the reason why people were doing it to do it for, but I don't, like, as a person, I'm like, why would I sit in a car? Like, I've seen these concerts, and everything else, and I'm like, I'm going to drive and sit in the car and then listen to the thing. And it has been I found it to be confusing, for me, but I think that everyone's trying to find some way. And a lot of the things that we see, a lot of the solutions that we see are organizations trying to figure out how to stay relevant, and for event companies trying to stay in work, and so they're pitching lots of things, and everyone's desperate to do those things. And I think that, we really, there's an opportunity lost in some ways of just what people really want is to be connected. And if we put our energy into getting connected, you can get connected to the organization without getting connected to their buildings and their parking lots and their locations. But we're not seeing that. Like, it's so hard. It's this uphill battle. They want to do a big event, but then we say, well, you should be doing something every week. Oh, well, that's hard. Yeah, it's hard, but in some ways it's easier though, because again, people get good at being part of your community. They get good at those things, and you have to do it out of repeats. Okay, now we're going to go into a speed round and get through some of these. I'm going to next question.
Karen Foote of Washington, D.C. says, does anyone know when the retailers will start offering Thunderbolt 4 cables?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I'm on Intel's newsroom page right now. They do not have a date yet, so no.
I don't even know what's using Thunderbolt 4 yet. So it's I guess are Thunderbolt 4 on the new Mac Pros?
No.
So it's still pretty far out. Next question.
Laura Thompson from here in the panel in Beaumont, Texas. Alex, I'm looking for doing presentations with graphics only. My first attempt, I noticed that the text that I would have to put on the screen ends up in the notes section. Is that okay?
Say that. Explain that, Laura.
When I do, I'm kind of taking a page out of your playbook and I'm using just graphics on the actual PowerPoint slide.
Yep.
But I find that the bullet points that I would have normally placed on that slide, or the definition for the word or whatever, I'm putting in the presenter's notes and I'm still reading it. Is
Yeah, no,
there
that's
a
fine.
way to get away from the
Practice.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like just practice, but that's where you want them. Is you want them in the notes, not in front of everybody. You know, the thing to always remember is if they're reading your slide, they're not listening to you. So you might as well just be silent and let them read it, and then you can start talking again. But if you know, I use the slides. The slides are really something that I use to underline what I'm talking about, not something that I don't want them to be reading it. Now you can give them a slide deck with all of that in text later, or just a document, but don't make them do it while you're talking. You know, I think that's the synchronous connection between all of us is really valuable, and we waste it a lot with slides. So I think you're going the right direction. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next question, moving on to Jonas Dattel of Reutlingen. Is there a way to get some feedback on my current setup from one of you or some other folks in the panel, I guess?
Join us at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, between 6 and 6:30. We do it all the time. We look at everybody's, like people jump in early and say, well, what does this look like? Or how do I sound? And there's, Victor was here earlier talking, checking out his stereo, and John was checking out his audio. So we do all these kinds of little tech checks between 6 and 6:30 in the morning Pacific Standard Time. Go ahead, TJ.
And also don't be afraid to ping some of us on the panel just to do a quick one-on-one Zoom.
Yep. Next question.
Earl Negrete out of Westlake Village says, I'd like to get opinions on good, better, best drones for camera footage of surfers surfing waves at the beach.
I would stay in the DJI family. So it's really just what money you have to spend in a DJI drone at this point. I don't think that any of the other ones are that competitive. Go ahead, Roscoe.
There is a waterproof drone. I don't know what brand it is. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
You can land in water and it's safe.
Oh, that's cool. Sky?
Yes, the DJI Mavic Pro. Again, I love the goggles, and it's very safe. It's got some good distance, and the new ones, of course, have the longer lenses so that you can zoom in. You don't have to be physically as close, and that you can zoom in. But yeah, get the headset. It's just magical.
Good, Jeffrey.
Wouldn't an underwater drone be a good option as well? Just a thought there. So there are some underwater drones that you could take a look into for surfing.
The ROVs, which I have some experience with, the hardest place to navigate them is where the waves are.
Waves are breaking, yeah.
Because the ROVs aren't wireless; they're wired, and it gets pulled. The thing we try to avoid is actually having our ROVs in the area where the waves are. We want to get further out and then drop them, because otherwise they get pulled around a lot, and
they become boogie boards,
and they damage relatively easily. I mean, they're pretty rugged, but you can once you turn them over a couple times, then you got to drag them out of the water. TJ,
you also don't want to take the chance of mixing cables and surfers and tumbling in the surf. Yeah. All kinds of bad.
Yeah. Anyway, next question.
It's the last one that's not EDU labeled. So James Babbitt of San Diego says, hi, Alex, please explain what you're referring to with the term 2110.
2110 is the SMPTE protocol that is going to basically be IP video. So it's basically it's kind of, as I've said before, and I know that some people don't like that I say it this way, but it's the grown-up version of NDI. So this is like where the real infrastructure comes in. NDI is we were impatient and we wanted something quickly, and it kind of works. 2110 works. It is built for production. Trucks are getting built against that. Studios are getting built against that. It's most likely the future. And so it's just, it's pushing video, up to uncompressed video over Ethernet. And so it is very heavy. It's like, this isn't like it is a grown-up version. So it's not like, I can just plug it in and make it work. There's a lot of infrastructure that's related to it, but it will, in the high end of production, it's kind of taking over. Like most of the studios we see and trucks we see that are moving in now, that are budgets of over $500,000 of install, are all doing 2110, which means that eventually it'll trickle down to all of us doing it.
We had a late last entry. Alex, do you want to do it, or do you want to leave this?
We can do it. We can do a last one, but John Preto, and then we'll go.
Sorry, my bird's going crazy. I didn't share there. My background also is in IT for 30 years. You're going to end up spending more money on your network infrastructure than you will on your video gear for 20.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's a lot of networking. Yeah, it's absolutely. Next, last question.
Last question. James in Dublin said, low-end camera choices. Given the option of a Logitech Brio or a Mevo Start, which would you choose? Possibly 2 or 3 camera setup, but only one computer.
I would get the Brio. So, I would get the Brio. For me, at the $200 to $300 range, I think it's a Brio or a Huddle Cam. I think the Huddle Cam has its own advantages, that it has an HDMI out, so you can expand to that. You can program it as a PTZ. But the Brio has the advantage that it's cheaper, lighter, smaller, and I think that their quality is very similar. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. Since you're gonna run it through a single computer, make sure your USB bus or buses can handle the bandwidth.
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then we'll move on to education.
Yeah, the Mevo Start gives you the option of NDI, which I know you just said that it is what it is. But the whole point is that it's the Mevo Start's meant for to be a wireless camera, whereas the Brio is more of a wired camera, and that might be the factor for you there.
Sure, and the Mevo Start is also twice as much as the Brio, so just keep that in mind as we make our plans as well. Okay. Let's jump into education. All right, we'll do a quick mic check. Mickey, why don't you go ahead and work through our new
Sure
entrance?
thing. All right. Apologies for the rain in the background, folks. But yeah, please put your first name, last name, and location in Zoom. And our goal in the meters is to hit negative 24 LUFS. So let's start off with Tony, and then move on to Bruce Francis afterwards.
Good morning, hello, good afternoon, good day, wherever you may be in the world. How's everybody doing today?
Tony, are you able to do just 1 or 2 dB steps on your levels there?
Let's see.
Or is it just do you only have access to the buttons on the ATEM?
Well, I can turn down the
Yeah,
volume.
if your only control is on the ATEM itself, then leave it as is. But if you have finer control, then I would ask you to bump down just a dB or 2.
Well, I turned the volume down just a little bit. Is that too much?
Yeah, that's too low. So yeah, just go back to where you were originally, and we'll stick to that.
Okay. So it's a very cloudy day here in Metro Atlanta, and I've been fooling around with my lighting, and I'm not sure how I look to you guys. To me, I look too bright.
Yeah, a wee bit too bright there.
Okay. I can.
But yeah, we'll move on to Bruce first. Let's get the mic checks through, and then maybe we'll go back to you if Alex is not yet back when we finish the checks. Bruce, and then Steve.
Good morning
Steve
from
afterwards.
Naples, Florida, where we are anxiously waiting to find out whether a hurricane is going to hit us. Hurricane Ada is scheduled to come over us, but may vanish and not be anything. This time's awfully late in the year. How does that sound for that? Is it a little high, a little low? Or what?
I think you're right on the mark level wise, though. Are you going through your computer's built-in microphone? It sounds like you are.
I'm plugged into my yes, I am going through my computer's microphone.
Okay.
This headset goes into an adapter,
Yeah,
and then
it doesn't sound like it's the headset microphone. It sounds like it's the computer's built-in microphone.
And is that good or bad?
It sounds this. I mean, we can totally understand you. But yeah, it just sounds a bit distant.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could try a different mic, but not today. I'll try and set one up for next time. Okay.
Okay.
We'll see.
Copy
Thanks.
that. All right, Steve, and then Kent afterwards.
This is Steve Cotton from San Francisco Bay Area speaking. Test 1 2 3 4. Test 1 2 3 4. I'll be talking about this level. Looks like it's a little bit low there. Does it need to come up?
Yeah, just the slightest bit up.
Okay. All right. Let's get on my audio here real quick. And let's taste 1, 2, 3, 4. Test, 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 test. There's a little bit more of a bump there. Test 1, 2, 3, 4. This is about the level that I'll be speaking normally. Test 1, 2, 3, 4. Test, test, check 1, 1. This is a test of the emergency broadcast network. Please do not call the radio station.
Alrighty. Yeah, if you could do just the tiniest bump back down, it should be good. But that's nitpicking already. Kent and then Emily afterwards.
Yeah, so how's everybody doing? This is very rainy up here in the great Northwest, and I am using a USB mic, so I don't have a ton of control over it. I'm in a little bit of a different setting. Is that way too low, Mickey? Is it, or are we getting in the neighborhood?
I think you're in the neighborhood there, but if you could give us just the slightest bump up.
Okay, awesome.
That'd be
Just give
good.
a little bit more, so awesome. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Emily, and then Aaron afterwards.
Good morning, everybody. This is Emily from Red Hook, and I'm looking to check the meter, and it looks like I'm a little low. I have to find the button. Hold on. Okay, let's try this again. 1, 2, 3, check. 1, 2, 3. This is Emily in Red Hook, New York. It's very sunny out. It's about 70 degrees outside right now. How am I doing, Mickey?
Yeah, I think you're in the ballpark. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank
And then Paul has seemed to drop in, so we'll go to Paul Wallace after Aaron.
Good morning from Boston, where similar to Emily, it's 70 degrees. So no more fall temperatures, but hopefully they come back soon. So how is that sounding?
You're in the ballpark there, but just if you could give us just the slightest nudge up, you'll be closer. All right, Paul Wallace.
Good morning, Mickey and the group. I'm here in Austin, Texas. I've been outside of Austin at my place out in the country for a few days, doing hard manual labor. And
give us a bump and level there, Paul.
Okay, we'll bump it up a little here. I'm going to hit the main thing. I'm on a new mic here. It's a Shure MV7, I think it is. It's a big mic. Big.
Just gotta get close to it.
Okay. Yeah. I got to close talk it. Okay. Here we go. All right. How are we doing now, Mickey? Hello. Test 1, 2, 3.
A bit too loud now. So split the difference on the distance and make sure you're at that distance when you when you speak. Paul.
All right. Here, I'm going to bump it down. I'm bumping it down a little bit, and see how that sounds as I bump it down. Hello. 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. Hello.
Another slight bump down, and you should be good, Paul. Thank you.
All right. Hopefully that'll be good. Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you.
Okay, so
all righty, thank you.
Before we get into the questions, how are we doing? Any new news from the educators? Anything that's working, not working, or it's a new issue that has come up? Does anyone have any stories to tell us from the last week of warfare? Emily?
We've stopped listening. We just are in automatic mode now. So yeah, you stop asking questions and you just pretend that what you are doing is working, and that you just happily move along.
Yeah. Go ahead, Emily.
I was just going to say, I put on Discord, the winter season is coming up and we're all still virtual for most of the kids and we can't have winter concerts. And so I had a conversation with a superintendent or assistant superintendent. She was like, I don't care what you have to do, make it happen. And I was like, okay, how much money? And she's like, none. I was like, I can't make magic. But another teacher in a local district here basically walked me through how to take Zoom videos, clapping to set the start. So on the fourth beat, they clap, and then you line up all the Zoom videos in Keynote, Logic Pro, and he did a little bit of audio filtering with, I can't remember, probably with the Logic Pro, but anyhow, he gave me all the steps and she purchased the software for me. So I was like, okay, great. And then I was like, but wait a minute, I only work for you 2 days a week because I work for multiple districts. And so I'm like, oh no, what did I do?
Well, you're about to learn Logic really fast.
Yeah, Logic, Keynote, we
were talking about this last week. The best drug for learning something new quickly is adrenaline. Like it's the wonder drug that we were naturally given. So
Adrenaline and deadlines.
Yep. Well, the deadlines. See, the deadlines
the-
generate the adrenaline, which allows you to learn faster. So that's the key to the operation. Well, we have a couple of people here that use Logic, so maybe we'll do some kind of overview or intro. Get somebody to come in and talk about Logic because it's a pretty cool app. So we'll take a look at that. Any other things that have popped up that are new? Anything else people are challenged with? I think we just got an email from my school or my kids' school that they're supposed to go back in November, and I was like, that is never going to happen. Like I was like, I don't. Why are we even having this conversation? So I keep on thinking that they're just crazy, and then they were like, okay, well, it's not going to happen until January now, and so it was just kind of a. I feel like schools would do much better if they just said, we're just going to do this whole year virtually, and then we're going to figure it out. And so everyone can just plan and just do what they're going to do. And then we'll revisit this. Cause I don't even know if next June will be any better, so we'll see how that goes. Go ahead, Emily.
And in addition to that, I think they're just trying to appease all the stakeholders. So you have these groups that are saying, oh, we have to go back. We have to go back. Like the kids are losing so much. And they just this week, canceled the Regents for January. In New York, we have the Regents test, and they give it in January and they give it in June. And they canceled it for January. And then the schools that did go back hybrid, the high schools have to shut down every time there's a positive or presumptive positive, because so many kids and teachers become contacts that it shuts the school down. And it's like, so let's stop playing this game. Can we just stop?
Yeah. There's such a lesson in this idea of relating to what you want things to be like as opposed to what they are. That you want to, that there's this circle that keeps on going on and it happens all the time in lots of different areas. But this has become like this great, public example of this. People really want it to be a way that it isn't, and so they just keep on, going down this, keep on trying to force a solution that they think we should be ready for this. And the funny thing about it is that all of these things are, that's what's dragging this along. These spikes, I mean, where do these spikes come from? They're coming from people going back to school. I mean, let's be clear. We can talk about a lot of other things. It was the spikes and people getting it. But no one wants to talk about that. They just want to go, wow, but it's all these, and we predicted that here in August. I remember sending out a tweet. The schools, and then we're going to see a bunch of big spikes, and then we're all going to go back to what we were doing. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, this might work for some of the educators. We had a 600-seat theater, which had a huge stage house and a big stage, and we're actually using it as a TV studio now. So we've converted it. We did a play with 4 people. Now we're going to do a musical with 12 people on it. But if you have that large, it could be a gym, I guess, in that case. Sometimes you can use that space to do these group projects or possibly get a choir in there that can all sing together in a gym. And they'll allow you to do that when you're in a large space.
Go to Laura.
We kind of touched on some of my pain points this morning at 6 o'clock, but just to give the quick overview, our university has, we go to open registration Monday morning, brand new registration system. We have a whole new back end for the way they're managing the campus network, which has thrown a few things off. And it's going to be fun trying to get 10,000 students registered for their classes on Monday.
Yeah. All right. Next, first question.
Bruce Francis of Naples is in with, does anyone have experience with or opinions about the media site LMS for Zoom that was announced at Zoomtopia? What are its strengths and weaknesses for colleges, for elementary or secondary education?
Has anyone looked at that yet? Does anyone have an LMS that they actually like? No.
I don't think that exists. I mean, none of them are perfect, but as long as they keep the grades and stuff, you can always, you have to make it work for you. You just have to kind of hack it and figure that out.
Right. No, absolutely. Go ahead, Roscoe.
We built our own. We have really talented IT staff, and they built their own, called it Titanium because we're the Titans, and we're now giving it up for Canvas.
Okay.
So
there you go. All right, Laura.
I was just actually in a meeting yesterday where we were discussing, we are a Blackboard school, but how every professor implements Blackboard differently, and our students are ready to pull their hair out. They can't, one professor was making the comment, they'll turn in their assignments, but they won't take the exams.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but and we have literally said that what we think we're going to do is we're going to encourage, if not require, professors to actually do a little video of a walkthrough of their particular Blackboard setup at the beginning of the semester.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that I'm trying to figure it out too as a parent, because my son is really not taking to it, taking to the online thing, and I feel like there needs to be a and I've thought this for school for a long time, is just needs to figure out a way we can measure people in small amounts, not in big amounts. You know, these big tests and, you know, all these other things, you know, we have to figure out how we, on a day-to-day basis, know where they're at. And I don't think we have a structure for that yet, to make that work. It's market opportunity. Next question.
Earl Negrete of Westlake Village says recommendations on wireless headsets for teachers that need to move around the classroom when teaching a blended class, in class and Zoom. Please note fairly loud white noise from the air scrubber in the classroom.
One thing is, don't go to original audio. So we use original audio because we have quiet rooms, or we have filters, or we have other things that are there. You don't want to do that. One of the other things that we've had some success in recently, just for this kind of direct connection, it won't always work, is a Parrot. Parrot makes some headset mics. I was trying to find something that was a little more basic. It's not as pretty as what we do. Let's see here if I can find the right. I can never remember the name of the Parrot. There is the B. There's a couple of them at different levels. So there's the B250, the B350, the B450. They're not going to be as pretty as something that's little and low profile, but they do give you a earpiece and a headset and a boom mic that the teacher can wear, that they can hear. You know, you can Bluetooth connect to it to your computer or to your phone. And I know a lot of people that are using these for comms, you know, to do comms, where they're, you know, and you'll get a range of 25, 30 feet from your source. But it may be something, as we try to simplify it, it's not free, but it's, when you're talking about walking around in the room and you need something wireless, you're not going to find something for less than $150 that's a mic, an earpiece, and wireless all at the same time. So, you know, so I think that if you look at those Parrots, even up to the B450, we've used those a lot for comms. They've been really successful, and we've been trying to find for a couple partners, how do we get them something that is usable, you know, for them to go down that path. Go ahead, Bruce.
I want to bring up what I heard on the office hours when we first started, when I first came on and started listening, and that was absolutely never use wireless for anything if you want quality. Is that,
well,
are you suggesting something that's different than that now, or is it?
What I'm suggesting is that it's in the cases where you have you're walking around, and you know, there's a lot of things that I can tell you that I believe. One is that, you know, you should do wireless only if you have the money to do it. I also believe that hybrid is a disaster. You know, so hybrid classes are a disaster, and I think more people are figuring that out. They're like, oh, it doesn't work for the people online at all, and it barely works for people that are in the room. And so, so hybrid is a disaster. Wireless you shouldn't do unless you have the money to really spend on wireless. That said, if people are going to go down that path, we have to have solutions that meet them where they are. You know, as far as, you know, they're not making all the decisions. So if you're a teacher that is being asked to do hybrid, I can't just tell you not to do hybrid. And if you have to walk around the classroom, I can't tell you to stay wired. So as we start to make those compromises, you know, there's a couple different choices there. One is that the Parrot, I think, is probably your best all-in-one. Like, I can just put this whole thing on and it'll just work. You know, and it's not going to work great. It will break up at times. If you have a lot of people using them in the same building, you may have issues. So, you know, so there's a lot of channeling issues and so on and so forth. I mean, the other one to look at are things like, you know, when you start going to industrial, like if a school wanted to go, hey, we want something to work everywhere in the school with wireless headsets, then you're looking at a company called HME. HME is what McDonald's uses and what Starbucks uses and everything else. So schools could theoretically, if they wanted to do a system-wide, I want the wireless to work, I'm going to build a unified solution for all of this and have it plumbed back out into things, then HME is probably the company to look at, because that's what they do. You got a whole, you got a big McDonald's, you got a big whatever. They own Clearcom, which is the company we use our comms for. But they are, they do, public safety, military, pro audio. It's not going to necessarily be the cheapest thing, and it's not something a teacher will get. If you're a teacher looking for a headset mic, then a Parrot is probably the solution. If you're a school system looking for a solution, then you're probably looking at HME for if you want to build these hybrids. So if you're going to do it, you do have to do it well. I mean, because the hybrid, the chances of your hybrid succeeding are very low. You got to give it your best bet, your best effort in those tools. So those would be the two things that I would suggest. As far as, there's a lot of other ones that I would use. Might use a Samsung and two Rode Go's and invert them and have them. Like I might wire myself all up with those things, but I don't think teachers are in that position, or school systems are in that position to do that. But the cost per unit is pretty low with HME if you buy them in big numbers. So if you're a district and you just want to have all your schools work and have a unified solution, that's what HME does. They're the world leader in that solution. So it might be something that schools have to think about if they're going to keep on going down that path. Any other questions about that or comments? Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind though with the solution, like if you go with the Parrot solution or the HME solution, these aren't really what one would consider broadcast grade, but in terms of speech intelligibility, that's they're really good with that. People will clearly understand what you're saying, but it's not like full bandwidth broadcast grade audio.
Oh, absolutely. Any other? Is that what do you got there? Is that the Parrot?
Yeah, this is the Parrot. And the only reason why I bought this is for Unity Comms. This is the one that Tucker suggests.
That's a 450.
I don't know.
And this is the 350. I realized I had one sitting on my desk. So this is the 350. And while we're talking, I'll plug it in. It may not be charged, so I'll plug it in and charge it, and maybe I'll try to jump on my computer so you can hear what it looks and sounds like here. But I don't think it's charged up right now. Yeah, I found it in the garage. We used to have, for our Clearcom, our Agent IC, and for Unity stuff, we had 50 of them at some point in time that we were using. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was just going to say, everybody thinks that this should be pretty simple. Wireless mics are a known thing. Everybody should be able to just get on and do multiple things. But if you've ever been around a news conference or something like that, where multiple TV stations are trying to do high-grade wireless in a group, it is a behind-the-scenes serious logistical nightmare.
And again, that's why Bluetooth tends to work, is because it's kind of designed to pair up so that, they can just pair up and talk to each other. And so that's why something like a Parrot can work pretty well. Anyway, next question.
Next question. Paul Prusakowski says, we use breakout rooms and Zooms extensively for corporate adult education and community building. Are there other alternatives with breakout room collaboration, or is Zoom the gold standard?
Zoom is the gold standard. Everybody else is falling away. Like I'm dealing with all of these networks, all these group things all day, whether in every different version of it, every different, whether it's Meet or Blue Jeans or GoToMeeting or WebEx or Teams, and they're all clunky, and for some reason, they're all getting clunkier. Like they're not, for whatever, I think out of the panic of trying to catch up with Zoom, all these companies are going in like 6 different directions at one time. And it seems like all of them are just in chaos, so, and at the same time, I feel like Zoom just keeps on making better and better decisions. They're just kind of quietly, putting all the bits and pieces. I keep on seeing little drop downs that they fix that I didn't notice about, like, oh, they did that. Oh, that's great. And, we had this problem with spotlighting where they, you couldn't swap spotlights and you couldn't swap pins. You could just keep on adding to them or subtracting from them. And then one day it was gone. They just kind of fixed it. And so I think that they're being led really well. And I just feel like everybody, and then they're adding like better audio quality, and they're adding all these extra feature sets, and the Zap, we haven't had time yet, but we're going to put Mukana our plan is to put Mukana into Zoom. so that you can just use it as an add-on to the system. And so I just feel like where they can't solve specific problems, they're giving us the tools to solve it ourselves, which is something we were campaigning for. Is like, don't fix everything, just make it easy for us to fix it. And so I think that the combination of the API that they've opened up, that will keep on opening up, and the direction that they're going, I don't think that anything else is competitive at this point, flat out. Like, I just think that they've dusted everybody off, and I don't think in the railroad wars, so to speak, the other ones are just going to get absorbed, or they'll still survive because Google needs Meet and Microsoft needs Teams, and they're integrated into their solution. So those two will be fine. I don't really get where BlueJeans goes, for it. And again, because BlueJeans, just keeps breaking everything. Like, every time we get an update, I got a whole bunch of interfaces that don't work, and Skype is the same way, and GoToMeeting and WebEx. I mean, they're just lucky that they're there. I mean, they're installed and no one knows how to uninstall them. So they stick around. Bruce.
Doesn't that quality and that extent and that growth and all of that's suggesting perhaps that somebody like Google is going to come along and buy Zoom?
They're too expensive now. I'm sure that they wish they could have, but Zoom's market cap now is like $60 billion. Like, they've gone from. I'm guessing. I have no idea what it is, but it's probably Predator knows. But I mean, I think their market cap was like $10 billion in December. Like, it's gone up like 10x, and so they were purchasable at one point. They are not purchasable anymore. Like, that's the. They're definitely out of that, and they're going to keep on growing.
142, Alex, right now.
142 billion. Yeah. So so that's like close to the value of Disney.
There's a
so I don't know what Disney's value is, but I don't think it's that much higher than 142 billion. It might be a couple hundred, maybe 200 billion or 250 billion, something like that. So I track Disney's market cap because I keep on thinking Apple should buy them. So I just keep on going, well, how much does Apple have enough cash? There's like every month I'm like, does Apple have enough cash just to buy Disney?
Apple could buy Zoom.
They could buy. 142 billion is too much.
It's not going to work for them. They don't want to be in that business.
Yep. Next question.
Rick Coombs of Columbia, Tennessee says, how do we get 720p resolution enabled? We have a paid account. It appears that we only have 640p now with 15 to 20 people in meetings, not a webinar.
And what you mean is probably 360p, 640 by 360. Super frustrating. Like, it is just painful that Zoom doesn't I'm willing to pay more. Like, I don't care about the cost of my webinar. I mean, within range. I have someone to put it on another side, I have someone who pays for a 5,000 person webinar and doesn't get 1080p. I think that's just nuts. So after I just talked about how great Zoom is, the way that they're managing their resolution is really frustrating. That we can't pay more to get 1080p is really frustrating. Like, I just want to pay into it, and double my cost, and give me 1080p, and I'd be happy. Roscoe.
Yeah, they only ask for 720p, so you can either talk to Guy Cochran or you can buy a Zoom.
Doesn't affect the webinars though. The webinar participants now.
Webinars. Sorry.
That's the kicker. Yeah. So if you do a meeting, like I have a meeting that we're doing for a client next week, we're going to have one of our Zoom rooms join the meeting.
Yeah. This person didn't ask for webinars, but for meetings, they can just buy a Zoom room and get there.
Yeah. If you're in, they didn't. I was looking at in meetings, not webinars. Yeah. Then there is a solution, and that is you can get Guy to join, but you can just get a room. A room's $40 a month. So this gets back to Roscoe's point. It's totally valid. I misread it. I think I saw not webinar. I missed it as webinar. So webinar is limited to 360p for the participants. If a room joins that meeting, if the room joins the webinar, all of the panelists get 720, and the participants are still stuck at 360. If the room joins a meeting, everybody in the meeting is going to get 720. So that is the easy way to bump everybody's resolution. Go ahead, Bruce.
I think we're redefining the term "get a room."
Yeah,
that was unexpected.
What's the technical problem with getting 1080p?
They're managing bandwidth. I mean, they've grown by 20x, and they just don't have the infrastructure to do it. I mean, that's why. I mean, they just don't have the infrastructure to give everybody what they used to. It used to all be 720. So this whole limited bandwidth is Zoom. Eventually, 3 months now, 6 months down the road, they'll be able to give us 1080p all across the board, but it's just a matter of they don't have the infrastructure to support that. Go ahead, Brian, and then Mickey.
Oh, just the question is can you buy month to month rooms, or is
Yep.
that like an annual purchase?
$40 a month. So you can just add it to what you're doing, and then you can go there. We own. I'm cutting down because we're not as busy as we were. I mean, we're still busy, but we don't need as many Zoom rooms because we had 14 Zoom rooms that we've been supporting, and now we're going to go down to, I think we're going to go down to 6 or 8, just to have enough to do what we're doing and save some money. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, in terms of things hopefully getting better, I remember, in office hours back in April, May, like we were getting Zoom storms every day, and now it's been fairly, a lot better. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Peter Collins in Vail, Arizona says, I'll see the collegiate nieces and nephews at Thanksgiving dinner. What would you ask them about their first semester experience? What recommendations would you make for them to improve their next semester?
Go ahead, Laura. And by the way, before Laura answers, we got one question after this one, so it could be a short day if people don't ask more questions. All right. Anyway, go ahead, Laura.
First thing I want to know is, how do they feel about the current experience? Where have they put that feedback? Have they got it to the administration, the advisors, the instructors? 3, how are they communicating with their instructors? What has their experience been? Because we're seeing on our campus, we're moving next semester to unify what return times on emails and chats and things of that nature are. So that would be one of the first things is, communication. What are you struggling with, and who have you communicated to? Because first semester freshmen don't know who to talk to and where to go. They think that they're alone and that there's nothing they can do to change the situation, when that is absolutely not true. The more feedback we get from students, that will push the curve. At least I know at our university, we're trying to solicit that feedback. And then talk to them about time management skills. Mm-hmm. Talk to them about time management skills, because that is one thing with the online environment. We're hearing the students, the 25% that are coming forward saying they're struggling. When we know from midterms, it's higher than that. Time management. Do they know what a syllabus is? I could talk on this for an hour. There's about 8 things that pop into my head right off the bat, but yeah, talk to them about what they're struggling with, and get them to an advisor, get them to a college coach, somebody on that campus that can help them navigate those struggles, because there are resources out there to help these students.
One of the things that in a smaller sample that we did inside the Pixel Corps was we had over 250 people that were in these teams that we had built. And what they committed to was not just, the end results, but they committed to the time that they were going to work on it. So they said, I'm going to work, for them, it was usually 2-3 hour shifts during the week. If they're on a team, you're spending 2-3 hour shifts on average. In that shift that week, they would declare what they're going to do. And so they had to declare specific measurable results. So it had to be specific. We had to be able to measure it externally, and it was some kind of result that had to come out the other end. And so they would check in, tell people, hey, I'm starting. 3 hours later, they would check out and say, I promised this, I produced this. You weren't allowed to say anything else. We didn't care. Like, I don't care whether you were busy or there were phone calls or that you didn't get your dinner done. No excuses. And it wasn't a matter of that there weren't excuses that were valid. It was that just stop looking at those. What did you promise? What did you do? And then make a new promise for the next one. So it was very clean cut. It drove people crazy because it's so confronting to only be allowed to talk about results. Makes people nuts because they want to have a non-result plus an excuse equals a result in their head. And when you take away the excuse, you just end up with non-results. Anyway, but what happened was it weeded out people to some degree, but it also, people got stuff done. Like, they got things done because they committed to time. You have to commit to what you want to do. You have to give it a time and place, or it doesn't get done. If things are amorphous, like for me, if you set up a meeting with me and you send me an iCal and I accept it, I will be there. It's just a block in time now that no longer exists for something else. If you say, let's meet on Monday, and I say, sure, there's no chance that that's actually going to happen, because this is for me. I mean, I'm telling you like a truth. If you say, let's meet on Monday, it doesn't have a place in time, and what fills up my places in time is schedules. And so I think that for education, I think that, figuring out ways that like study groups, discussions, so on and so forth, that are constantly engaging students to work together and to work on these things, so that part of it's that it helps for them to work together on Zoom or whatever they're doing, but also it helps create a space and time that they're accountable for to actually work on that project, because otherwise it just gets filled up with other things. And a lot of times those other things are surfing the web and watching the election and looking at the news and going shopping or whatever, and things that feel like, oh, I have to get to those eventually, or those are important right now, but they're not. You need to fill up those spaces with things that actually need to get done. Roscoe?
Are they taking one class that they're actually interested in?
Right.
That'd be my question to them. Are they, find something that they're passionate about, or sometimes find them a mentor too, as Laura kind of mentioned. If they can find somebody that they really want to learn from, that's great.
I didn't have too much trouble getting my homework done because I only took classes that I was interested in. I changed my major all the time. Like I would go, I can't take this class, I'm not in that major. I just keep on changing my major. It's not a way to that's how you don't get out of college, but it was really fun. Like I would take a lot of classes, and I would, I drifted from sociology to psychology, or I drifted from engineering to sociology and psychology, and then to philosophy, and then Eastern philosophy. So it was like this kind of drifting, but I just let my choice in classes define my, because I just went through the list of, oh, these would be cool classes. I think I'm going to take these. And it was my experience was much nicer after that. Laura?
I graduated from college with 248 credits applied to a 120 credit degree with 2 minors.
Yeah, see, there you go. It's one way to do it. You have to stick to community colleges and state colleges to get away with that, because you can't do that at Harvard. Anyway, so next question. Well, you can if you have a lot of money or a lot of scholarships.
Sky is repurposing his earlier question for the main group to this. Could we ask these educator guys earlier question, where were you in your career 20 years ago, and how is that different than today?
So for the educators, some of us already shared this. Anyone? Go ahead, Tony.
Okay, so 20 years ago, wow. Okay, 20 years ago, I was actually doing, as a career, I was a social worker working with children in therapeutic foster care. I also was doing a catering business, a film photography business, and I was ordained as a minister so I could marry you, cater your food, and take your photos.
Not to mention do the counseling.
That's what I call vertical. That's like a quite a vertical company. Service. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so
that's awesome.
That's just part of it. So 20 years.
That's great. Ken.
Yeah. So are you able to hear me right now? I had to switch to my iPad. So
you're a little roomy, but it's fine. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So I was starting about 20 years ago at the university where I am now. And it's one of those things, kind of like you had mentioned, Alex, about the, it's round and it's for kids is and if you were to somehow say 20 years from now, you're going to all be doing school in totally different places, you just have no concept. And so, I mean, that kind of tells me 20 years from now, we are going to be somewhere totally different too. And, what kind of thinking can we have now to get us there in a better way?
Yeah, that's great. Emily?
Well, 20 years ago, I was living in Australia doing a backpacking 2-year break, and email was my only real connection back home to my family. And I was working in a law firm where my job was to scan documents into a computer by hand and then create a word bank searchable bank for the lawyers while they were in court if they needed to find a term related to the trial. And now, like, I went into education. This is my 13th or 14th year in education, 14th year, I think. And I was always the tech forward person because I came from an IT background and always trying to make things work, and to see it so much easier, like the pathway to using the technology to enhance what you're doing. But my struggle for the last 6 years has been trying to get other teachers to understand that even though it's a heavy front lift, it'll make your life easier on the other end, was always really difficult. Explaining to them that it could help more students, you could reach more students using technology. So your E&L students can maneuver your assignments better if they have access to tools for translation. If you give them not a PDF scanned, but an actual document so that they can have it read aloud to them or have the words pronounced so that they're not embarrassed to ask, how do you pronounce that word in front of their peers? And same with special ed kids. And now to have COVID flip that for me so that the majority of my teachers are now doing the heavy lift they should have been doing.
Well, they don't have a choice anymore.
Yeah, I know they don't have the choice anymore and they have to. And now what my trainings are going towards is sustainability. So in the idea of like, okay, now you've already done this. So going forward, how can you use this to reach more students, to reach more families, to build community online, to have conversations asynchronously, and that's okay. Like the kids won't burn it down. Like one of the big things that I think translated for me to the teachers was like my relationships when I was in the classroom, it was relationships. And then what I was teaching, like my kids knew I was safe and that anyone could come in my room. And I learned the hard way. I did things that I probably shouldn't have said. I like tease kids that didn't get the teasing or didn't understand the sarcasm. So there were always like learning mistakes like that, but it was always the relationships first. And then now if you tell the teachers, like you can build these relationships, like you can cater to individual learners if you allow the technology to help you and stop trying to do the heavy lift all alone and work with resources across. So making connections between teachers, I've seen during COVID really change, teachers connecting with teachers on Facebook. That wasn't happening at the scale that it's happening right now. This summer, I was sending Aaron Google documents and just being like, here, take it, whatever you want, just take it. If it works, it's great. If not, pass it on. I don't care. And I think that is kind of changing and I hope for the better. So
That's
Emily, I am going to so steal tech forward. It's so much nicer than geek.
That's great.
You make tech forward look really good.
Yeah. Bruce and then Aaron.
So 20 years ago, I was president of Capella University, which had just gotten its regional accreditation from the North Central Association after a long struggle. And we were just seeing the online education. Everything at Capella is and was online. And we were one of the few institutions that were doing it and were struggling. I had no conception as to how we were going to make online education legitimate. That was one of the major things. In order to build the market, we had to make people believe that you could have doctoral and graduate and undergraduate education online. And now it's so massively different. It's amazing to me that it took a pandemic to make something like this happen on a broad scale that we had believed in for many, many years before. But if I think back to 20 years ago, the struggle had just become legitimate, but getting people to believe that education could be done this way was still a major task that all of us felt we had ahead of us.
Yeah. Aaron?
So 20 years ago, I was a student myself. So I'll go back just 10 years to when I started teaching. And just the change from using books to run off materials for kids and just giving them those digital tools, it's so much more helpful, pretty much parroting everything Emily said, the ability to give kids what they need in order to be successful, whether it's project-based or small group work and breakout rooms. It's such a different world to be able to connect with so many people, and the ability to talk to so many teachers, whether it's on Facebook or sharing it on Instagram or even TikTok. Learning new skills is so different now than it was even just 10 years ago.
Yeah, as a parent, I can say just 1 year ago, I was still complaining about my kids getting all this paper that they had to bring back, and it's gone. Like it just got sorted out. Steve?
Yeah, 20 years ago, I had my own production company, had 52 people working for me and doing all kinds of productions all around the world. And then 10 years ago, or actually almost 13 years ago, the Academy of Art University tapped me on the shoulder and said, we need a leading edge, production oriented department that's on digital media. And so for 13 years, we've been creating it and moving it, and it's been fun, not looking back and just really putting in the effort to build the next generation of media ninjas. That's my goal, and that's what I've been doing, and it's been a ride. I still keep my hand in producing and keep my hand in doing a lot of other things, but it's been a great ride in education and a lot of fun, a lot of exploration. You never stop learning, so it's a great place to be.
Tech forward media ninjas. I love it.
That's always the thing that, like, there's part of me that just wants to train, just wants to teach people. I don't want to, I just want to get out of production and just train all day. I mean, I would do this all day if I could. But I realized that I wouldn't be I'd only be useful for a little while, so if you're not doing it, not producing it, the advantage that I get is that a lot of companies spend a lot of money on my education right now, a lot more than Harvard. So, they give you big projects. I mean, between a couple companies, they spent about $30 million on my education and flew me all over the world, and and had me do all this stuff by having me just do lots and lots of thousands of projects. And so I do think that continuing to do production, and I think that for any teacher, I think doing it, I think you're in it now, so I think that's easy. But I do think it's important to keep your finger in it. Next question.
James says, to use Zoom Rooms, do you have to have a separate account for Zoom meetings? For example, to get it to work, do you have to pay for both?
I don't think so. I think you just pay for the room. You just need to pay for a room to have a room. I don't think you need anything other than that to do it. I think it comes with the subscription, because the Zoom Room subscription is more than the Zoom meetings, that they're paying for. So I don't believe you do, but I've always had a pro account. Not always, but for a long time, I've had a pro account. So it's, I'm not totally certain. Next question.
Craig
go ahead.
Hibbert.
Roscoe, what are you going to say?
Oh, well, I was going to say it's aimed at a consumer level. So yeah, you don't have to buy a corporate account or anything. Just buy the Zoom Room. You'll be good.
Yep. Next question.
Craig Hibbard says, education seems to be an ad hoc adventure right now. Have there been any attempts to formally evaluate the effectiveness and downsides of blended education, the effect of quality video and audio and stuff like that?
I think there's been attempts to do that for a long time. I think the hard part is that there were only fringe people doing it for a while, and it wasn't really incorporated into school. And now schools has to throw it in, and there's so many variables that aren't working. It's hard to measure what is working. So I think that's the real challenge right now with education of measuring anything, is that there's so much chaos that it's hard to define what parts are working and what aren't working. I mean, I can just say from anecdotal experience my experience is that flipping the I mean, this is part of it. So this is the part that I could do right now. And as we go into the winter, I'm going to start adding the other parts that I know I already knew work, which was, videos. We're going to have more pointed conversations, challenges. Those are all. The coffee challenge was one little experiment in that area something that I already know works. So I think that I think that those are the other pieces to add. I don't feel like, from my perspective, after doing this for 20 years, in different ways, I feel like there's a pretty straight line to having things succeed, and they're not necessarily tests or other things like that. I mean, I think a lot of people here have found that we learn a lot just by talking, so, as far as what we do. But if we add challenges and videos and, other references, those are going to be the other things. Like, for instance, when I send out stuff for next week, most of the sessions will have attached to them reference material. So this is kind of the new thing. So you'll see some videos. Here's some videos. Here's some things to read before that hour. So before we talk about Atmos on Tuesday, or before we talk about Vision on Wednesday, before we talk about cooking, I'm going to send you here's a couple examples of some cooking things that to think about. And here's, and before we talk about languages, here are the things to think about and to read. And so, the idea is to start mixing all of those bits and pieces together. So it's not just a blank conversation. It's hopefully an informed conversation. And then what we need to do is add, there's a couple things we're going to add to Makana over the winter that means that the conversation for, let's say, a Wednesday about vision can start a week before. So that we can be converse. That can be a place that you can converse about it and ask questions and vote on questions and everything else long before you get to the actual show. And then a lot of that stuff is kind of built up in a different way. So that's kind of coming. So anyway, go ahead, Roscoe, and then Sky.
Yeah, I think asynchronous learning is just taken off with YouTube. But from an organized standpoint, I think TED Talks is a pretty good example of just, an organized group that's put together some pretty good materials that's pretty compelling to watch a lot of them.
I think that the thing about, I'm a big fan of TED Talks. I went to TED Africa in 2007. And so it really changed the way I look at content completely, because I realized that what TED does when you're actually at a TED Talk is that there's a ton of space in between the talks, so you can talk to other people and you can converse, and it's hard to get in, relatively hard to get into like one of the main TEDs. The TEDx's are a little easier, but the TEDs, you have to apply to be allowed to go. And they want to know that you're going to be someone interesting to talk to for everybody else. And so they really pay attention to that. It's a community that you're building up. And so I was like, I do work in Africa. I have a school. Can I come? But I think that the thing that we're experimenting with here, and the other things that I think that are important, is this kind of the long audio form of talking through something. And I think of This American Life as kind of the gold standard of that. If you're not listening to This American Life, you should go download all of them. There is, and I know this will be sensitive for some folks but they do one about the Dakota massacre in Minnesota that is amazing. Like, you should know that it happened, number one. Number two is the storytelling and understanding it, and understanding that process is so powerful. And it's just this, but it's incredible if you break it down. For some reason, I've listened. I feel like that one's a really important piece of our history that we don't really talk about. And for some reason, so I've taken that one and I've broken it down into like where they were when they shot each interview and who they talked to and everything else. And I just, sometimes I get obsessed with a piece of media and I'll break it all up into little pieces. And one of the things I look at is, they were on site, and some of the stuff is at a place, and you can hear some of the environment, and then you can go into this other part, and then there's other interviews, and then they talk to the other, and there's a structure to it. And the one thing that with This American Life is that they, no matter what it is, it's always going to be good. Like, you look at it, you go, that's going to be boring, and you just know that you can turn it on and it'll be good. But the point I'm trying to make is that I think that the TED Talks is an incredible example of condensing, like spending so much time to condense something into 18 minutes that you can just pull that in. And I think that as educators, we have to see that. Then This American Life is a good one of, how do we use audio so that you can walk around and listen to it and teach you more, that you have a little bit more time because you're not necessarily just sitting there watching it. And then, then we figure out how to add challenges. Then we figure out how to add reference. Then we add, there's all these, back to your point, is all these asynchronous solutions I think are really important. Go ahead, Sky.
So much fun. So a living TED Talk is how I often describe what office hours is for me. So it's a CrossFit of conversation, and good conversation in civil discourse, which was a real thing thought I was missing in the media. So civil discourse within structure, and for a forward positive solution was awesome. And then there was several other things, but there so many good things talked between when I raised my hand and when I got to say it.
Next question. We're going to burn through these because I actually have to go help an online school.
Yeah, Tony
do a
Mobley.
presentation.
Tony
So-
Mobley's in with the next one. Have there been any school systems that have upgraded student hardware or software and can be talked about?
Other than everyone's getting, I mean, I don't know if everyone in the school system we were in had a Google Chromebook before. My kids all have them now. I mean, I think that that became I think for most school systems, a requirement. I think a lot of school systems were still in between. Are we going to send a computer back? And I think the one thing that all students have now is a computer or an iPad or some kind of device. So Emily, would that be the case? I mean, I don't think there's any school that doesn't have that, because you have to.
Our schools that were one-to-one before COVID actually had 2 cohorts of Chromebooks that were headed towards end of life. And because of the budgeting situation, we weren't allowed to order them until July 1st. Because of COVID, they aren't scheduled to come in until February. But that's like, so they're coming in batches, like, oh, we have 100 we made, we're sending them to you to fulfill your 1,000 order. And all of my schools that didn't have one-to-one were scrambling to purchase those devices because the Chromebook is the least expensive portal to the internet. It's a netbook. And in order to make it, so that kids could have access regardless. But what I think is funny is that when you look at, prior to COVID, it was like, oh, like we can't do one-to-one, like that'll never work. We can't send the devices home. The kids will destroy them. And like all that stuff's happened. And the worst case scenario is that like, oh, a kid took a Chromebook and tried to flip it around to the tablet because he had a tablet before, the Chromebook that turned into a tablet, and now he doesn't. And he accidentally broke the hinge. Like those are our worst case scenarios right now. And so I think, everybody did get on. As far as upgrading, I wish that we had more money to get quality devices, but then quality devices require more maintenance, require, more updating, more. So the Chromebook is the answer to at least getting it into their hands, or the iPads. So most of our elementary, like K2, have their hands on iPads, and that seems to be working out okay. But, the price points and then maintaining and pushing things out, that adds another layer to the devices and software.
Yeah, I do think that, obviously it's tragic how this all happened, but I think COVID's there's a lot of negative changes that it's created, but there's a lot of positive changes. I mean, it's going to change so much because it just forced everybody to go down a path that they weren't ready for. I mean, we're seeing that all the folks that were in Silicon Valley are all going home. they're all wandering back into, or they're going to Hawaii, or they're moving to the Midwest, or they're all kind of like, there's just this dispersal back into the world, instead of being this intense thing. And I think that we're going to see, as companies adjust, as schools adjust, it's going to be really interesting. Go ahead, Sky, real quick.
Yes, very quick. Managing expectations. You just announced that you're adding stuff to your email. That's huge, because I usually just I'm here just in time to click on it and then wanting to get onto Zoom. So you're telling me I should be reading further down?
I've been experimenting with it badly over the last little bit of time. So sometimes you'll see me forget to update it, and it'll be like Thursday on Friday, or Monday on Thursday.
That's a trust issue that I don't not trust you. I absolutely trust you. I just would have never thought to read past the click here to get online.
Right.
So I'm just saying, manage my expectations, please, and promote the crap out of this. Hey, we're doing a thing.
Well, we're just behind on building our own system that gets out of pulling everybody into Zoom and gets into pulling them into Makana and everything else. And so we are in
a perfect place, sir.
Yeah. So anyway,
we are right here.
So we're figuring it out. Yeah. But right now, Zoom only lets you do a certain amount. Like if I could structure it a little differently, I would. I just can't. There's all this, but you'll notice me playing with telling you what's coming up next down below on the thing. Anyway, next question.
James Babbitt here in San Diego. How would the tools in the new iPhone be useful in education? LiDAR, Dolby Vision, and Dolby Atmos.
I don't know if Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, I think are going to really make a difference in education. They're really cool. The LiDAR, I think, is pretty interesting. I've been experimenting with it. The resolution so far on the LiDAR tools aren't super compelling yet, but I think that we're moving there. So one of the things that's going to happen is, even with some of the older stuff, but the LiDAR means that you can place objects in front of you very, very easily, whether you're in a big environment. Let's see if I can find a picture of this. but whether you're in, you know, you're showing off, you're giving someone a tour or letting them look at something that's really big, there's all kinds of things that that you can. I'm just trying to find an example here. Share. Let me show you. Oh, let's see. This is something I'm working on, so this is not done. And I'm gonna hold on. I'm not super excited. I'm gonna hold on. Everyone on YouTube, I'm just letting you know that I apologize, but I'm not going to show this on YouTube. So just